So welcome students. So today we move on to the next part, directive principles of state policy. So directive means giving direction or showing the way, okay. So the directive principles of state policy are enumerated. Enumerated means got in, or it has been shown up in part 4 of the constitutions from articles 36 to 51. So where can we find the directive principles of state policy? From in part 4 of the constitution and articles 36 to 51. The constitution does not contain any classification of directive principles. So the constitution, we already know the law, so it does not have any classifications of directive principles. However, on the basis of their content, so though it does not have any classification, based on the content means the subject that is inside that and direction, they can be classified into three broad categories. One is socialist, the other one is Gandhian, the third one is liberal intellectual. These principles are not enforceable by the court. So these directive principles cannot be enforced, they cannot be forced by the courts. And then we have differences between but they are fundamental for the governance of the country. So these directive principles are fundamental, basic for the governance of the country. The government is duty bound to apply these principles while making law. So what is the use of these directive principles? So while you want to make up a law, while you want to create a law, the government has to go by the directive principles. They aim at promoting the social welfare of the people. So the main aim of directive principle is it promotes, it improves the social welfare of the people. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar described these principles as novel features of the Indian Constitution. So he called these directive principles, who B.R. Ambedkar, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, he called them as novel, something new, novel features of the Indian Constitution. So difference between fundamental rights and directive principles of state policy. We have already learned fundamental rights in the previous class, and now we are going to see what is the difference. So fundamental rights, it was derived from the Constitution of USA. So from where did we get all these fundamental rights? From USA. Whereas directive principles, it was drawn on the model of the Constitution of Ireland. So it was taken from a model from Ireland. Even the government cannot take away or abridge these rights. So here fundamental rights, no, even the government cannot take away the rights from the Constitution. These are mere instructions to the government. Mere means simple. So directive principles are, they are instructions to the government. They are enforceable by a court of law. The fundamental rights can be forced by the court of law, whereas just now we studied the directive principles are not enforceable by the court of law. They have legal sanction. So legally you can sanction, you can permit something to be something to happen. They have moral and political sanction. So here morally they can do it, politically they can put forward. These rights strengthen political democracy in the country. So fundamental rights, it will improve the political democracy in the country. Whereas the directive principles implementation of these principles ensures social and economic democracy. So when you try to implement, when you try to act on directive principles, what will improve is it will ensure social and economic democracy. They are natural rights. Which is natural? Fundamental rights are natural rights, whereas directive principles, these lead to protect human rights. So principles, directive principles, they provide human rights or they protect human rights. The next one is fundamental duties. So we need to differentiate here. What we studied earlier was fundamental rights, that means basic rights. Here we, as a citizen, we have certain duties, and those duties are called as fundamental duties. The fundamental duties in the Indian Constitution are inspired by the Constitution of former USSR. So, from where are we supposed to take the fundamental duties? We got inspired by USSR, which is nothing but Russia. Whereas fundamental duties, fundamental rights, we took it from USA. In 1976, the Congress party set up the Sardar Swaran Singh Committee to make recommendations on fundamental duties. So, in the year 1976, the Congress party at that point of time, they appointed a committee called as Sardar Swaran Singh Committee, which means a group. For what? To make recommendations. Recommendation is which one to allow, which one is not to be put forward, to make recommendations on fundamental duties. The 42nd Amendment Act of 1976, already I have told you amendment means corrections. So, the 42nd time when they were trying to correct it, this called as the 42nd Amendment Act of 1976, added some responsibilities of citizens to our constitution called the fundamental duties. So, when was this added? In 1976. By which act? By the 47th Amendment Act. During that time only, certain responsibilities were given as to the citizens from the constitution. This amendment added a new part, namely part 4 to the constitution. So, already we had part 4, now we are adding a new part which is called as part 4A. This new part consists of only one article. So, under part 4A we have only one article, and that is article 51A, which for the first time specified a code of 10 fundamental duties of the citizens. So, under article 51A, 10 fundamental duties were listed. List of fundamental duties. So, this is very important. As an Indian citizen, we should all know the fundamental duties everyone has. Article 51A declares it to be the duty of every citizen of India. First one, to abide. To abide means to go by the constitution and respect its ideals and institutions, the national flag and the national anthem. So, you have to go by the constitution, you have to respect the ideals of the constitution and the institutions, you have to respect the national flag and the national anthem. To cherish, that means you should feel happy. To cherish and follow the noble ideals which inspired the national struggle for freedom. So, you have to feel happy for those people who fought for our freedom. That is why we celebrate Independence Day, Republic Day, okay. So, that you have to keep in mind. To uphold and protect the sovereignty, in unity and integrity of India. So, we need to protect, we need to keep up unity and integrity and sovereignty among everyone. To defend the country and render national service when called upon to do so. So, you have to defend means you have to protect the country, you have to render means you have to give national service when you are called during an emergency to do so. To promote harmony, that means peace. You have to promote peace and the spirit of common brotherhood among all the people of India, transcending religious, linguistic and regional or sectional diversities. So, we know that India is a country where you have different religions, you have linguistic means different languages, you have different regions, regions means states, you have sexual directories, that is based on caste and all that. Diversity means different. So, even though we all belong to different categories, we should still maintain brotherhood. To renounce practices derogating to the dignity of women. So, we should renounce, we should give away practices that will put down the respect of women. To value and preserve the rich heritage of our composite culture. So, we have to value our culture, we have to protect the rich heritage of our composite means varied culture. To protect and improve the natural environment including forests, lakes, rivers and wildlife, and to have compassion for living creatures. So, we have to protect, we have to improve natural environment. What are natural environments? Forest, lakes, rivers and wildlife, and we have to be compassionate. Compassionate means lovable towards living creatures. To develop scientific temper, humanism and the spirit of inquiry and reform. So, we need to do scientific researches, we need to develop humanism, that is showing humanity, and the spirit of inquiry, and reform is nothing but changes. To safeguard public property and to abjure violence. So, we need to save public property and we have to give away violence. To strive towards excellence in all spheres of individual and collective activities, so that the nation constantly rises to higher levels of endeavor and achievement. So, we need to work towards excellence in all the spheres. All the spheres means at every level we need to work towards excellence, both individually as well as collectively, so that if you do so, nation will constantly rise, where in every endeavor, that means endeavor is in every step that the nation takes, it will be able to rise and it will be able to achieve. To provide opportunities for education to his or ward between the age of 6 and 14 years. So, this is very important. So, one of the fundamental duty is you need to educate child between 6 and 14 years, it is compulsory. The 86th Constitutional Amendment Act of 2002 has also introduced the 11th fundamental duty under 51A(k). So, we already learned 51A. 51A is all those fundamental duties. Now, they are introducing one more, which is called as 51A(k), under which all citizens of India or parents, whether you are a parent or you are a citizen, you shall provide opportunities for education. So, everyone should give a prior opportunity to education for children ranging from which age to which age, from 6 to 14 years. The next one is center state relation. So, center means we know that is the central government and state is the state government relationship. So, what kind of relationship should the central government and the state government have? The Constitution of India, being federal, federal is togetherness in structure, divides all powers between the center and the state. So, the power between the state and the center is being divided. The center state relations can be studied under three major heads. One is legislative relation. Legislative means based on laws. The Union Parliament, that means union here is central, okay. The Union Parliament, the central parliament, has the power to legislate for the whole or any part of the territory of India. So, the parliament, the central parliament, they have the power to produce laws for the whole of India, or they can produce laws for only a part of India, which includes not only the states. So, they only need to produce laws not only for the states, but they can also produce for the union territories or any other area for the time being. So, the central government can produce laws for the state, for the union territory, for any part of the country. The 7th schedule of the Constitution embodies 3 lists. So, under the 7th schedule, the Constitution talks about 3 lists. One is the union list. Union means central government list. Another one is the state list. The third one is the concurrent list. So, under the union list, you have 97 items. Under the state list, you have 66 items. And under the concurrent list, there are 47 items. The Parliament enjoys the exclusive power to legislate on subjects enumerated in the union list. So, the Parliament, it can produce or it can enjoy exclusive power. So, power is given to the Parliament on what? To make laws on subjects that are related to the union list. So, out of the 97 items, they can enforce their own power. The state legislature, whereas the state government or the state law has exclusive right to legislate on the state list. So, the state government or the state legislature, they can work upon those state lists. Both Parliament and state legislatures have power to legislate on subjects contained in the concurrent list, whereas both the parliament and the state, they can have power over the concurrent list. So you should understand here. So we have how many items here? 97 items are there. Who can take control over that? The parliament can have exclusive rights. Whereas 66 list items we have, who can take complete power? The state. Whereas 47 items can be shared between parliament, the central and the state. That's what they are trying to tell you. And then list, but in case of conflict between the law of the state and the union on a subject in the concurrent list, the law of parliament prevails. So, but if in case there is a fight between the state and the central about the concurrent list, then you can have the parliament, whatever the law the parliament brings will come into force. Next one is administrative relations. So, administrative is admin. Okay. The administrative power of a state extends only to its own territory and with respect to which it has legislative competence. So, the administrative power of a state, the state can only enforce its power to its own territory, whereas the union has exclusive executive power over. So, whereas the union means the central, they have executive power, they have exclusively, they have certain powers over the matters with respect to which parliament has exclusive power to make laws. So, the parliament has a power to make laws. Okay, the parliament only has that, and the exercise of its powers conferred by any treaty or agreement. So, they can implement their powers by any form, by any treaty or by any agreement. Already we have learned treaty means a written agreement is called as a treaty. So, when they bring a law, they can exercise their powers by writing down a treaty. Financial is money. Article 268 to 293 in part 12 deal with the financial relations between center and the states. The center and states are empowered by the constitution to impose various kinds of taxes. So, the central government as well as the state government, they have power to levy, they can ask for taxes. Various kinds of taxes they can ask for, and certain taxes are imposed and collected by the center, whereas certain taxes they are put forward and they are collected by the central government and divided between the center and the states based on the recommendations of the Financial Commission appointed by the President under Article 280 of the Constitution. So, we see that here certain taxes will be collected by the central government, but will be shared between the central government and the state government based on what? Based on the recommendation made by Finance Commission, and this Finance Commission was appointed by the President under which article? Under Article 280 of our Constitution. Late Prime Minister Indira Gandhi appointed the Sarkaria Commission in 1983. So, our late Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, she appointed a commission, means a group called as the Sarkaria Commission in 1983 to make an inquiry into the central state relations. So, she made a committee to know about the central state relationships. The central government has implemented 180 out of 247 recommendations of the commission. So, the Sarkaria Commission, they recommended how many? 247 recommendations, but out of which the central government only implemented or accepted 180 recommendations. The most important is the establishment of the Interstate Council in 1990. So, out of 180 recommendations, the most important was the Interstate Council, which took place in 1990. The official language. So, official means for office use, what language is to be followed, that is what we called as official language. Part that is 617 of the Constitution, deals with the official languages in articles 343 to 351. So here official language is spoken in from which article to which article? From 343 to 351. Its provisions are divided into 4 heads, namely. So the language part is divided into 4 heads. One is language of the union, that means what will be the language of the central government. What will be regional languages, means state. Regional means state languages. What are the state languages? Then language of the judiciary. Judiciary means what will be the language followed by the courts, and text of laws and special directives. So if there are certain laws to be written, certain directions to be given, what language should be followed. So they were under 4 headings. The first language committee was appointed in 1955. It submitted its report in 1956. So to study this, they appointed a committee in 1955 and it came out with a report in 1956. As a follow-up of the report, Parliament enacted the Official Language Act in 1963. So after giving the report in 1956, the Parliament brought forth the Official Language Act in which year? In 1963. The Act laid down that even after 15 years, English may continue to be used along with Hindi for all official purposes of the Union and also for the transaction of business in Parliament. So what did the Act say? Even after 15 years, English will continue along with Hindi as an official language, where in the central government, and also for transaction of business in the Parliament. So any kind of business that goes along in the Parliament, they must use both Hindi and English. Again, through the Official Language Amendment Act of 1967, so next time they are again correcting it in the year 1967, it was provided that the use of English would continue indefinitely. So they finally said in 1967, English should be there as a language indefinitely till the end. The Constitution also permitted certain regional languages to be used for intra-state official transaction. So the Constitution gave the right between states, so they can use up certain regional languages were approved by the Constitution. Initially the Constitution recognized, so it approved how many regional languages? 14 regional languages. You know that India follows a lot of languages. We have around more than 100 languages in India, but initially how many languages were approved? 14 regional languages were approved, which were included in the 8th schedule. At present, we have around 22 languages are recognized. So now our Constitution allows how many languages to be recognized? 22 languages. So go through this and be prepared.